Hi, this is our case presentation for Price, Jesse, Chloe, and Owen. So starting off with question one, um, analyze the data and determine which passenger would most likely be survive and least likely to survive. So the way that we went about this is we put it in a table and broke it down by class, age, and gender, and then put the percent survived for each one of those. And then from that, we broke those out into different charts. I used Pareto charts in chapter 6. We learned about this, and I thought it displayed the data in the best manner to help, explain it to the audience. Starting off with the different classes, we found that in the first class, they had a 62% survival rate. Third class, 25% survival rate. Second class, 41% survival rate. Crew, 24% survival rate. Then we broke it into the age group with an adult survival rate of 31%, child survival rate of 52%. And then lastly, we broke it down by gender with a male survival rate of 21% and a female survival rate of 73%. All right. And kind of like I mentioned before, we thought Pareto would be best for breaking down the data. And we thought that it, did a really good job. So in terms of most likely, looking at these bar charts, we found that a first class member who was a child and a female would have the highest rate of survival, and then least likely crew member, adult, and male. And we just found this by looking at the different bar charts and coming to that conclusion.
So what led to these numbers? First off, the Titanic's voyage started off on the wrong foot completely with a coal strike that delayed them for 2 weeks. This put the trip on the wrong foot, which increased stress and pressure for the crew and the captain to get back on track. This put the voyage into different weather patterns and conditions than were originally expected on this trip. The rush felt by this coal strike was not the only hurry they were in. In fact, being in a rush and a hurry seemed to be a major theme throughout the Titanic's tragedy. First, the captain was in a hurry so he could win his Blue Ribbon Award, which is given to the ship that can cross the Atlantic the fastest. And he was in competition with the Lusitania, which was a ship meant to be faster than the Titanic and was inherently going to be faster than the Titanic. In this chaos and rush of departure, the crew also failed to do a lifeboat drill, which meant the passengers did not know what to do or where to go for safety in case of emergency. And these issues were compounded for third class passengers since lifeboats were located amidships, which is where first class passengers were staying. On top of being rushed, the weather conditions the night of the crash were unusually calm, and there was no light out, which meant the crew could not identify obstacles in their path. The crew would normally use splashes, waves, and moonlight that reflected off objects in their path to tell that they were there, but that wasn't possible. The crew had to learn to work with each other as well, as this was the Titanic's maiden voyage, which meant the crew had an increase of miscommunications and errors since they were still figuring each other out at the time. It seems that part of the Titanic's issue was the crew's and captain's inability to be flexible in their operations. Starting from the beginning, they were put on a delay, and instead of practicing flexibility and adapting their plan to be the safest and most effective, they rushed into a preset target that was no longer obtainable for them. As we learned, flexibility is a major component to success of a company and plays a big factor in how a company will either change with the time or sync with the pressures of change. And to outline this further, Jesse will elaborate.
Yes, so clearly the miscommunication was a major recurring theme in the Titanic tragedy. Not only was there poor communication from the crew to the passengers, but there was also miscommunication from the crew members to the crew members, as no one was helping third-class passengers open the gates to their lifeboats. Passengers were also waiting for further instructions on how to get to their lifeboats, and officers in charge of the lifeboats were being selective on who they would save, such as Price explained in the survival rates before. Women and children were only being let on the lifeboats, or men with rowing experience, or even first come, first served mentality. As we have learned in supply chain management, when there's a problem at the root of a product or a service, there becomes a domino effect of problems. This is what occurred with the lack of communication for this voyage. Not only were there problems with the ship and the layout as Chloe discussed, but the ocean water itself was at dangerous freezing temperature levels. Due to the freezing temperatures, lifeboats were even refusing to pick up passengers even if they had more room due to fear of tipping over. However, some did pick up survivors after being threatened by passengers. And to conclude, the wireless system was a communication system for passengers on board to tell their loved ones about their estimated arrival times and just to keep them in the loop about their voyage. But this demand became increasingly high when ships passed near New York and passengers wanted to use the system in high volume. This made wireless communications extremely overwhelmed and was a major factor in the tragedy. And now Owen's going to conclude us off and kind of wrap us off today.
To wrap everything up, clearly there are compounding issues that led to the disreported deaths of crew and first-class males on the ship. These issues mainly focused around being in a hurry, disorganisation, communication errors on and off the ship. As we have learned, the beginning stages of any supply chain, including the Titanic, needs to be as close to perfect as possible for the rest of the supply chain to succeed. Secondly, had the crew and captain been flexible, they could have found a way to adapt to the changes thrown at them from the start. Their issues meant disaster before it even struck, and there were so many moving parts on the voyage that had not been expected. Had the communication been in check, the proper safety precautions would have been taken, and the time put into ensuring safety, all the features of the Titanic could have meant safety. But with so many falling factors, many innocent lives were lost. Had the crew and captain been flexible, they could have found a way to adapt to the changes thrown at them at the start. But they chose to remain rigid in their plans, which led to so many people dying on the Titanic.